Absolutely. That's a good way to put it. And thinking about it, I have 2 kids on the spectrum myself. And one thing that I love about Hanen is that this is not an added to-do list of you don't know how stressful it is to have a child with delays or disabilities until you're in that place. It is very stressful. And so it can feel overwhelming to think, oh, great, now I have to be the one who's going to be sitting down at the table and practicing our flashcards. It's like, that's not what this is. What this is giving you tools to support the routines that you already have in your home.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Therapy Unmasked. Today, we have a really awesome episode. We are joined by Kristina Pickett. She is an SLP, but specifically, she's certified to teach a very awesome program, which we're going to be talking about today, and it's called the Hanen Program. And you'll notice that we're also joined by Aaron, and we usually have Nick in this seat, but the reason we have Aaron here is because when I talked to Aaron's the one who introduced me to this program, and when I talked to him, he was just very passionate about this program and how helpful it is for kids that are on their SLP journey, on their speech therapy journey. So we're just going to kind of dive into this program. So we'll start with you, Kristina. If you just want to tell us, what is the Hanen Program?
Sure. So Hanen is a program, they're actually in Canada. And it's kind of fun because some of the resources that we get from Hanen are Canadian English. And so you'll get a random U in a word or like an E at the end of the word. So just a funny thing about it. But they started in 1975, 1977, around that time. And it started with a handful of speech therapists. And at the time, the method of intervention was really clinic-based, and the families weren't really involved. Parent education, parent training wasn't really involved. And they saw that there was a big need for parent resources and parent education. And so over the years, they've developed multiple parent education programs that help parents become the experts of their children. So any good therapy involves a parent training component. This one just takes what we learn through the years of therapy and condenses it into classes where parents really dive deep into what is speech development, what should I be aware of, and what are the interventions that not only help my child learn to communicate, but also help me learn how to connect with my child.
How long have you been SLP for?
2013.
Okay, so quite a while.
Yep. And then I've been Hanen certified since 2014.
Okay. So you jumped into the Hanen program quick. What was it that really stuck out?
I worked with a company that required it.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So they did it for me, and I ran some Hanen classes initially once I graduated. And then I moved out of state. I moved to Colorado, and I was there for about 8 years, and I implemented Hanen in my therapy, but I didn't run classes. And when I moved back to Utah, I started a private practice here. And I said, there is a need in Utah for more resources that are out there. And I know that so many families are hungry for more resources. And I said, I've got this training, I've got these skills, we've got Ability Innovations with this amazing network. And they're already doing amazing things. Why don't we collaborate and find ways to really reach the community in a new way that can really support parents?
Yeah. And I mean, so Kristina kind of reached out to us and kind of was telling us a little bit about the program. And that's where, like, you know, in the past, I had a little bit of experience in early intervention. When I was a student, we ran a couple Hanen programs, and I would just help with like some childcare during that time. But I saw the benefit to the families. And so when Kristina reached out, I was like, this would be an awesome opportunity to give something to the families, something they need. So
I'm really grateful that you did.
Well, and that's interesting. You bring up like giving it to the families, because the Hanen program is very parent involved, right? The parents are involved heavily. Do you want to kind of just walk us through like what that looks like? Like, is the parent there at every session, or yeah, just kind of explain how that works.
Yeah. So there are 8 classes that are about 2 to 2.5 hours long. So it's a good chunk of time. Each class has 4 to 8 families. That includes whoever is involved in that. So, caregivers, not so much educators. There's specific Hanen programs just for educators, but if grandparents want to be involved or whatever, that's totally fine, or whoever that might be. But caregivers come, and it's without the child. And so they would come, and it's within the group setting. Parents will learn the strategies. And what's so great about Hanen is they focus on adult education theories. And so it's not your typical, here's a PowerPoint, let me tell you the strategies, take some notes and go on your way. It's very involved. And so there's a lot of personalizing it to your own life. There's a lot of practicing in the sessions. There's a lot of role playing where you practice with other parents. There's a lot of discussion where you talk about ideas, what works, what doesn't work, brainstorming. So it's very involved. And they do that based off of research of what helps parents and adults learn, and they stick to that. So once parents go to those classes, and interspersed within those classes, there are 3 at-home visits with me. And I go into the homes with you, and I coach you through in the homes while you're there, and you practice. And we actually do video feedback sessions, which again is supported by research. Hanen's very big on we do what the research supports. And so it feels scary, but I promise it is absolutely worth it. We do video taping of of parents practicing the strategies, and then we watch it and we go through and we say, wow, look at what you did here. Look how your child responded. Or what do you think you could have done different here? And how do you think your child would have responded? And parents really, by the time they leave the class, they are experts on their child.
That's awesome. Yeah, that was going to be like my next question, is like how research influenced it. But it sounds like the whole thing is built around research and making sure that this works. And I'm assuming because of that, you see good results with this program.
Absolutely. We see good results. And it's funny because you think of results as how many words can my kid say now, or how many signs or whatever it might be. And that is true. We do see results there. But deeper than that, to me, one of the biggest results is now I can see my child and I connect with my child. And as we connect with our children, language follows and language development will follow. But I've seen families who have said, I didn't know who my child was until I took this class. And then because we follow our research of parent or child-led communication, we really dive deep in parents. It opens up the door for them to connect finally. And that's to me the most rewarding part.
I think it might be helpful. Maybe I wrote a couple questions that maybe some parents might have, and maybe go through a couple of them. What's the key difference between it takes 2 to talk and more than words?
Sure. So we are teaching 2 classes. It takes 2 to talk and more than words. Hanen does offer more classes, but these are the ones that we're going to focus on. It takes 2 to talk is going to be for our early language learners who have those language delays, early language disorders. That's really that early language learning, so that birth to 3, 4, 5 age. So these are going to be kids who are not yet saying words, who maybe are saying a couple of words, but they're having a hard time developing more vocabulary, or kids who maybe have some words, but they're having a hard time combining words into sentences. Or when they are combining words into sentences, it's not as robust as what it could be. So just that early language learner. More than words is autism specific. And so it's taking language development and breaking it down to the core of language, which is interaction. And so if you have a child who has a hard time engaging in an interaction, so that might be that sometimes parents will say they're quote in their own little world, or I just don't know how to engage with them. I have to work so hard to engage with them. that's where we start. We build on engagement first, because if a child's not, to me, I say number one, if a child's not regulated, we can't get anything done. So thank you, occupational therapy, for helping with us with that. So first we regulate, then we engage, then we communicate. And so it's really building on that engagement piece. So that, again, it's going to be our early communicators, so birth to 5-ish. But if you have an older child who's still struggling with that, or who has those challenges with engagement, then this would be a good fit.
Would that include like Gestalt language processors, or like, I guess, generalized anxiety disorder, I guess, would fall under that too? Like,
right. And so we say autism, but we say autism and or other social communication disorders. And so that would be, again, if the piece is engagement, then that more than words is going to be a better fit.
right.
If a child's engaging well, but they're having a hard time communicating, then It Takes Two to Talk might be a better fit.
What is the age range for that? Because so the first one is early childhood. Is there like a specific age range you focus on for that second one?
So for both classes, it's going to be early language. So for more than words is also early language. Thank you for clarifying that. So that's going to be your early communicators as well. Not most often. A lot of times these are kids who maybe say just a handful of words or are not using words, or like you were saying, Gestalt language processing fits beautifully with Hanen Program before, because Gestalt language processing obviously is very important. It's kind of it's getting a lot of traction right now as it needs to. Hanen has always incorporated strategies that support our GLP, or Gestalt language processor learners, because it's not rigid in the words that we need to learn in the structure. We're always modeling those phrases in a meaningful way that GLP learners pick up on really nicely.
The costs.
Yeah. So I know that you're still kind of trying to figure that out, but
yeah, the tricky thing about cost is insurance will cover the home visit. So if you are insured and already are working maybe with Ability Innovations and have that set up, then home visits are covered. The 8-week classes would need to either be out of pocket class or expense, or we're working with insurance. There's a new code that is available for speech therapists. That's group education. And so it's insurance based. So some insurances, because it's a newer code, some are accepting that code and some are not yet accepting that code. But again, insurance would cover the home visits, so the 3 to 4 home visits. And then out of pocket for classes if insurance does not cover that.
Okay, so it sounds like it's not like a flat rate for everyone. It's just going to be different based on what your insurance plan is. And
yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, flat rate. What I've stuck to in the past is going to be a rough. So parents have a rough estimate. Usually about $80 to $90 per whatever that may be. So so per class. So 8 times $80 to $90. Might give you a rough estimate of what you're looking at.
Okay.
So how do you measure progress throughout, or how can parents measure progress?
And it is going to be parents. Parents are going to be the one who are going to be measuring that. So in the program, we do create goals that parents create themselves. I like it because we talk about the dyad of communication, meaning that it takes 2 to talk, that it's not just focused on the child, but it's also focused on what am I doing to help that child? And so we make goals for parents that I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And the hope is that as I do X, Y, Z, my child will respond by doing A, B, C, right? And so we measure progress that way. And at the end of the program, you'll review your goals and say, look how far I've come, look what I've done, look what they've done.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think it's good to have goals for the parents and for the child, for them to, see how well they're doing themselves, because, parents need to be involved, right, for the success of their child.
So looking towards the end of the course, so say they finish the class, is there any support for these kids when they're done?
Yeah. And so that's up to the parents. So they can either continue continue forward with the speech and language services that they might already have in place. And now that they know the supports in the home, they work in the home on their home programs. And then the therapy clinic might work on other strategies that are more specific to that child and what they might need. Or I do have a private practice, and people are more than welcome to continue to work with me outside of that and continue with that parent coaching.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess what I'm thinking then is this isn't like, I mean, I hate to say it like this. This isn't going to cure your child.
Right.
But this is going to give you the tools to help communicate with your child, to help your child communicate better. And then once the course is over, you can still further that, but you now have more tools.
Absolutely. That's a good way to put it. And thinking about it, I have 2 kids on the spectrum myself. And one thing that I love about Hanen is that this is not an added to-do list of you don't know how stressful it is to have a child with delays or disabilities until you're in that place. It is very stressful. And so it can feel overwhelming to think, oh, great, now I have to be the one who's going to be sitting down at the table and practicing our flashcards. It's like, that's not what this is. What this is giving you tools to support the routines that you already have in your home. So I'm going to be giving my kid a bath. How can I make bath time more engaging and fulfilling for our family? Or we're going to be going in the car. And how can I make that more engaging, fulfilling? And so by the time the class is over, when parents leave, they now have the tools that are going to give them support in those routines. That's a lifelong process. I use daily my Hanen strategies with my own kids. And at this point, it's second nature. I don't have to think about it because it's so ingrained in who I am. And that's the goal for families, that by the time they leave, it is ingrained in your interactions. And so it's not a to-do list of an added thing. It's a state of being with your child.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I love how you put that.
That's great. One other question that maybe people might ask is, how did you get your certification, or what were the steps to getting certified to teaching the program?
Yeah, so Hanen has certification classes. It's a 3-day training that we're required to go to, and we learn about adult language learning theories. We learn about some of the strategies and how that looks. We learn about how to run the program in a way that is effective and efficient and supported by research. And then we learn the Hanen rules that there's a lot of, we can't change a lot of the Hanen program. We can't tweak it because they know that this is what's backed by research. And if we start tweaking a little bit, then who knows what, that can be a slippery slope. And so there is a lot of copyright laws that we learn about that we have to follow as well. So after that, we maintain kind of like I have a professional licensure that I have to maintain yearly. I maintain my Hanen licensure yearly after that as well.
What are some things that parents can do to prepare for this class? If they're interested, they're ready to sign up, what can they do to make sure that they're ready to go into this class and just get all the information they need?
Get the best out of it that they can. I love that. That's a fun question. I'd say that tuning into your child and starting to notice your interactions and thinking of our dyad. Not only is what my child is, what is my child doing, but how am I responding? How am I interacting? How am I engaging? Is this working? What works? What doesn't work? Starting to be curious about that interaction, both for It Takes Two to Talk and More Than Words. I talked about engagement with More Than Words is really important. Absolutely important for It Takes Two to Talk as well. We're just looking at it through different lens. So being curious about your engagement, starting to take some mental data, thinking about what's working, what's not working, so that when it's time to show up, you're already in that headspace to open up those doors to learn more.
So we're going to be doing an orientation class. So if you can kind of just tell us a little bit about the class, when it's going to be, what parents should expect from the class.
Awesome. So orientation class is what it sounds like. It's a free orientation class to the It Takes Two to Talk and More Than Words classes. It's going to be held on July 15th at 6:30 here at Ability Innovations in Layton. And that's a really great opportunity for parents to come learn a little bit more, get some questions answered if they might have some questions. and make that decision whether or not they want to make that investment into the class that we're going to be offering.
Sweet. And I think we said it was going to be like an hour long.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on how many questions they have.
Right. They might have a lot of questions.
If they have a lot of questions, it'll be longer, but it should be about an hour for you for people to really get a feel. And I will say, hopefully we'll continue these classes. And so if the fall, we're going to start in the fall, first week of August, we'll start our first week of classes. We're looking at a morning class and an afternoon class. So morning for It Takes Two to Talk, evening, not afternoon, evening class for More Than Words. So if that doesn't work for you, we're hopefully going to be continuing those classes. And the next time those classes are offered, families can look at doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you like pretty limited on how many kids you can have per class?
So that there is a cap, because if we go to adult learning styles and we look at research, we know that classes that get too big, learning is not as effective. If classes are too small, learning is not as effective. And so there's a magic number where we want 4 to 8 families to be in each class.
Is there anything else you'd want, like either parents who are interested in this program to know, or even just therapists who are curious about how this program works? Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd want them to know?
I think for parents, I just want to emphasize that it's worth it there's a lot of programs out there, and a lot of them are really great and worth your time. This is one of them that's really great and worth your time. There's a lot of noise of what's worth it to me. What should I spend my money on? Like I said, I've got 2 kids on the spectrum. I know how much things can cost, and where do I want to put my money? Also, where do I want to put my time? Because this is a dedication of time. And I just would want parents to know that you can trust this, that I back it up, and that it really is worth it in the end. And then for therapists, I would say if you are interested in learning more, the Hanen website has more information. If you're a speech therapist and you want to be certified, you can of course look into that avenue. They have at home making Hanen happen at home programs that can help your therapy in your clinic setting, or if you go to homes. If you're another professional, if you happen to have a kid that you're thinking of, that you think, wow, this I think would be a really good fit for this kid, please feel free to reach out and we can see if we can support them too.
So all applicable links to the Hanen websites, as well as to the link on our website where you can register for this orientation, as well as the other 2 classes that she'll be teaching. I'll put those in the show notes, and I'll also put them up on the screen for those of you watching, so you can go there and check it out and see if it's right for you.
So I just want to say, I'm really excited for this program. And like I said, my limited experience, which was in early intervention as a student, I even saw the kids that I worked with. Even though I'm an OT, I saw the improvement in those kids and in those families when that program was offered to them.
I'm really excited too. I think of course I'm excited, but I think this really is an amazing opportunity. And I'm so glad to bring more resources to Utah, where I think that especially in this area, there's a lot of need, and I'm really happy to, hopefully we can start meeting some of those needs in a more meaningful way.
Well, thank you for coming in. We have one more question, and it's what we ask every guest that comes on to our podcast. So Ability Innovations is a very superhero-themed clinic. So we always ask every guest that comes in, what would you say is your superpower?
Do you want a real answer, a serious answer, or a not serious answer?
Whatever answer
whatever
you want to give.
Feels right. Whatever feels right. I think I'd like to say, I don't know if this is always true, but I'd like to say my superpower is my ability to connect. I like to connect to people. I like to see people who they really are and where they're really at. And I'm glad that I'm in a field where I can exercise that superpower. And I think and I hope that does make me a better professional. Silly answer is I can read minds. I'm just kidding.
That would be cool. we'll go ahead and wrap up today's episode. Again, special thanks to Kristina Pickett for joining us today. All applicable links to the Hanen program, as well as the orientation we have coming up, will be in the show notes. Again, this is Therapy Unmasked, and it's brought to you by Ability Innovations. Go ahead and check out our website, www.abilityinnovations.com. We have tons of great resources, articles, and blogs that are written by licensed therapists here. We also offer paid courses that you can check out as well on the website. And right now we're actually offering a free offer for those who want to try out our courses. You can try the first month free by entering the code FREETHERAPY. After that, it's $14.99 a month, which isn't really that much money for the value you're getting with all these courses. So feel free to check that out. And all of that stuff helps keep this show going and helps keep our therapists here happy and secure in their work. So again, special thanks to all of our guests, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.